Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana, and we're here today with special guest, Barbara Basbanes Richter, who's here to share with us her work with DIYBook, in-ink ghostwriting, and the French to English translation of Mademoiselle de Malepeire by Fanny Reybaud. So have you wanted to write a book, but you were unsure of where to start? Well, today's show is just for you. So Barbara Basbanes Richter is an accomplished author, public speaker, French to English translator, podcast host for Writing for Immortality, and founder of DIYBook and in-ink ghostwriting. Raised in a home steeped in books and greatly influenced by her father, an award-winning editor and National Book Award finalist, Barbara's upbringing richly nurtured her literary heritage and profoundly honed her critical thinking skills. Barbara's multifaceted career, marked by her roles as a managing editor for Literary Features Syndicate, columnist for Fine Books and Collections magazine, and contributor to the Wall Street Journal and the New York Daily News, has firmly established her as a prominent figure in both modern literature and entrepreneurship. So welcome to the show, Barbara Basbanes Richter.
Thank you, Marianne. I'm so happy to be here.
What an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this. So let's start with the book. I mean, what even had you inspired or interested in translating this book?
The first time I read this particular book, I was in grad school, so over 20 years ago, and I was reading actually literature for another author named George Sand, who was another French romantic author. And this author, Fanny Reybaud, was a contemporary. And I remember, as I suspect a lot of grad students feel when they're reading, they have to read things really, really quick and then go on to the next. And I remember thinking, I'd like to come back to this someday. So I read it, put it aside. And then many years later, 10 or so, I was looking for something amongst my many, many books to read for pleasure. And this little paperback, well-worn paperback, kind of looked intriguing, and I picked it up and I read it, and I immediately just was enchanted by this very easy to read, yet thrilling story of a woman misunderstood by useless men in her life. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be fun to translate this? And that's really the origin of this story. And to my knowledge, this particular author is very little known, even in France. So I knew that I was picking an obscure author and an obscure book, but it felt like a great story and an opportunity to see what I could do with it.
Well, it comes so well together. I really like how you brought that book together. And for our listeners that are going, gosh, okay, this might be a book I want to pick up. Can you tell us a little bit about the story without giving away spoilers?
Okay, sure. I would say if you love books, then it is a bibliophile's delight, because it centers around a misunderstood aristocrat at the turn of the 19th century. So French Revolution, right before the French Revolution, leading up to it. And this particular woman reads forbidden books in secret, which is very trendy right now. We're talking about banned books and things of that nature. Well, it goes back. This isn't the first time that's happened. So she reads forbidden books in secret while seeking forbidden love. And this all happens in the lead up to the French Revolution. And it's told from the perspective of a young man many years later who comes across a painting of this enchanting woman in the home of his uncle, who's also very well read. So there's a lot of books and things going on. But so this young man sees this painting, and kind of like the Canterbury Tales, where people come in and they see something and they start talking. It's similar here. So visitors come to the uncle's house and they see this portrait, and we get this whole backstory about this woman, Mademoiselle de Malepeire, and her forbidden love.
That is such a great introduction to that book, and I'm so glad that you shared that with us. Well, and how long have you been interested in books? Because my goodness, you have quite a career with them.
I guess it would have been funny if I had gone into anything other than like the book world. My father, he's the author of 10 books. He's working on his 11th book right now. And back when I was a child, he was the books editor for the book section of the Worcester Telegram and Gazette in central Massachusetts. So part of that required reading lots of books. So, every other day it felt like my birthday because the delivery man would just bring boxes of review books. So, my sister and I, who's now actually a children's librarian, we just kind of had free reign with all of the books that we wanted to read, and so we read widely. And if it was new, we had it. So I always felt that it has been part of my life. So it would have seemed unusual to pursue something else. But my true love really is French lit. I studied that in grad school, undergraduate and grad school, French language and French literature. So that was really my true passion. But always books, always reading, and I taught for many years. And then after I stepped away from teaching, I did that. I decided to pursue writing full time. And so the very first thing that I did with writing was actually book reviews. So I was kind of following in the family trade in a way. And I was interviewing authors and getting to hear how they put stories together. So it's always seemed like an extension of me, a book. I feel very ill at ease if I don't have a book around me, as I'm sure you feel similarly.
Oh, yes. And I always have overflowing bookshelves that end up having to have books purged and go to the library. So I know what you're talking
Giving
about.
them a second life.
Without a doubt. Well, and so I know you do this writing for immortality. Why don't you share with us what that is?
So, Writing for Immortality is a podcast that I just recently launched, maybe a month or so ago. And it's a way for me to help people who are looking to write. Writing, people want to write stories, but sometimes it can be overwhelming on figuring out where to start. So the writing process, the podcast aims to sort of demystify the process for folks for whom writing maybe is not their profession. And so I offer tips and advice, and we do book reviews, of course, but I also have some wonderful guests. We have authors and publicists and librarians and poets and people who talk about telling a story, and not always in like traditional ways. For example, we just did an episode this week where I talked about an exhibition I went to go see at the Hispanic Society in New York. And it was about an artist who was telling the story of his childhood fleeing Cuba and how he had kept a journal entry as a child. And this installation built on that journal that he had kept, and he created these oversized canvases. And I talked about it because it's another way to tell a story. That there's not just one way to tell a story. I think so. That's what the podcast is about.
So you also have DIYBook. What is that? I'd love to hear more about that.
Well, so that goes kind of hand in hand with the podcast. So if I can back up a little bit, so prior to DIYBook, and actually after I started book reviews, I moved into ghostwriting, which is writing for other people under their names. And what I've found for folks for every person perhaps that I worked with as a ghostwriter would have to turn away a dozen or so folks, because good ghostwriting, unfortunately, is expensive, and it is out of the realm of a lot of people. And that I really that made me sad. And I thought, how could I help more people be able to write the stories that they so clearly want to write? They have this desire, but perhaps the means is not there. So I took the ghostwriting process and I broke it down into discrete step-by-step parts that I feel that anybody can follow. And that's what DIYBook is. It's actually a patent pending online writing platform for people who want to write their life stories or their business books.
And so what type of books do you typically get for DIYBook?
Well, we offer two types of book. I basically based this on the most requested services I got from ghostwriting. And in ghostwriting, the two most requested books are life stories, so memoirs, things like that, and business books, so entrepreneurs, thought leaders, CEOs, corporate histories, those sorts of things. So at DIYBook, if folks, they can choose your path. You can either choose the right life story path, where you'll receive prompts weekly based on selections geared to you, or if you're looking to write a business book. Business books are a little bit more prescriptive, even though every business journey is different. There's generally a particular arc based on the type of audience you're trying to reach. So we did kind of tailor that more to the business entrepreneurial journey. And if you stick with the program, you will generally have a book, which is pretty exciting. And the other nice thing is that if people do get stuck, which does happen, I do offer blocks of time with my professional ghostwriters that work with me. So writers at DIYBook can book blocks of time. They're not going to get a ghostwriter to write the full book for them, but they'll get professionals to be able to look over their shoulder and say, hey, if you're stuck here, maybe try this technique. Maybe that'll help you work through this tough spot.
That really empowers the author to get in there and to do the writing.
Yeah, and it really the goal is to show that you can do this. People can write their stories, and I feel truly that everybody does have a story in them. And what stops so many people, sometimes it's time, right? We all have our lives, we're all doing different things, and just sitting down to find the time to do that. Well, we offer some structure. If you answer questions once a week, you will make progress. You can, of course, answer your questions more than once a week, but we have to be realistic with our time frame. Some people get overwhelmed and they get paralyzed by thinking, "Oh, my book's not good enough. Why is it? How is it different from somebody else's?" And then that kind of prevents people from making any progress. And the thing I would say to that is, everybody is unique. Nobody has lived your life, so your book has value, and other people will find value in it.
So, for folks that write memoirs, is it always something that they want to publish as a book or maybe something they publish for their family?
So, no, that's a great question. So, in a lot of cases, especially for life story, their family, become family heirlooms. So we have customers who want to preserve their life story and the story, perhaps their parents or their family, for their children or for future generations. So, for that reason, we actually don't automatically include an ISBN, which is the barcode on the back of most books, because some folks don't actually want to publish these books and have them on the marketplace. They want to create them as presentation items, as gifts for loved ones. Um, there are other folks who do want to try and have their book out there on the marketplace, and we do offer assistance for folks who want to try that as well. So, people have different goals, and we try to accommodate as many people as we can.
That's so clever being able to pull all that together so people can approach it in several different ways and have it fit for them. So, not all books need to be, as authors are very private, they may not want that out there, just out there for their family.
Absolutely. For a gift for a family, if you're we actually had a customer who did her life story, and her children, when they received this book, they were surprised to learn that this author's parents, they didn't speak English. They were French, and they lived up on the border in I think Massachusetts or Maine, and so that was a surprise to them. And so she was able to share something with them that they didn't know, that enriched their knowledge of their family history and strengthened their bonds. But that's not something that the author had any interest in putting up on Amazon. This was just purely something for the family to keep.
What are the reasons that a business expert would create a book?
Oh, there's a lot of reasons. For one thing, if you write it, you are the authority. We can think of so many business folks who have a book. If you're reading something in a magazine, if you look at their byline afterwards, it'll say so and so is the expert on these widgets and is also the author of this book that talks about this. So that's one really big reason, is establishing authority in your domain. Another big reason is that having a book, if you're a business book, is that you'll attract clients. So if you can show them that you've taken the time to write a book, it's different from writing. I'll back up. Sometimes you see folks who are companies that say, we have an ebook, and there's nothing wrong with an ebook, or download this pamphlet, something like that. That also shows that you've devoted some time to your industry or your service or your product. But taking it a step further and actually creating a book that somebody can hold, that has been edited, that has steps to it, demonstrates, I think, a business person's commitment to their product or their service. And then another nice thing about a book is that it can increase network opportunities. You have a book; it's a great calling card. You can give that out when you're at events. And people will remember you. If you have a stack of cards, you might not stick out as much. But if you've got a book, somebody might have that on their desk, and they're going to look at that more frequently.
Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Barbara Basbanes Richter in regards to DIYBook. We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Have you dreamt of writing your own book but felt lost on where to start? Introducing DIYBook.us, your personal guide to bringing stories to life. Whether it's your life story, business insights, or unique experiences, DIYBook.us makes it easy and affordable. With our step-by-step online program, you'll receive a weekly email prompt tailored to you. Don't let your story go untold. Visit www.DIYBook.us and start your writing journey today with our free 7-day trial. DIYBook.us, where your story comes to life.
It's one thing to become attached to your perfect home, but what do you do when that home becomes attached to you? A family in dire need of a fresh start, a mysterious house tied to the past. Buried deep within the foundation of the old Far Hill Manor lies a centuries-old secret. Dark forces or something stronger just waiting to be discovered. Caretaker, a supernatural thriller by breakout authors R.J. Halpert.
Are you a coffee lover who wants to make a difference? Look no further than Fire Department Coffee, a veteran-owned business that gives back to support first responders in need. Each batch of coffee is freshly roasted right here in the USA by a dedicated team of first responders and coffee experts. So when you enjoy a cup of Fire Department coffee, you're not only drinking high-quality coffee, you're supporting members of your community. Start your day with a coffee that gives back. Visit firedepartmentcoffee.com. That's fire, D-E-P-T, coffee.com.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special. When you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with special guest, Barbara Basbanes Richter, who's here sharing with us DIYBook. Before we left for break, we were talking about the many doors and opportunities that writing a book opens for you. And my goodness, it is never ending.
Yeah, absolutely. You get booked on podcasts, you get booked on radio shows, it just opens a lot of doors professionally for business people.
Well, and do you help people kind of narrow down whatever their message will be? Because you can have somebody that's really good in business and has maybe several different messages that they want to get across.
Oh, absolutely. So that's part of the reason why the business book writing program is a little bit more tailored, because some of the early questions that that program asks is, what is the problem that you're trying to solve, and what is the solution you're trying to provide? So if you have a business owner who has their hands in lots of different domains, they really I recommend that they get clear on who this particular target audience is and what you're trying to serve them, how you're trying to serve them. So that's really important. It can be tempting to put everything in one book, and some people do. Like, these are all just suggestions too, just based on obviously my experience ghostwriting. So ultimately, the author's going to know best what works for them best. So if they say, I want to talk about these 3 different things in my book, then they should. So, but generally speaking, it is it's helpful for the reader to follow if you really find one particular issue that you're going to explore in your book.
Are there other types of books that people come to you to write? Maybe like, they want to gather the family recipes, so it's available for the family.
Oh yeah, well then you can actually do that through DIYBook. That we have folks who come in and they have this actually happened to me personally last summer. Well, the family all got together and we were all talking about. Do you remember when Aunt Helen did this recipe? And do you remember when Stella did that one? And we were all sharing recipes. And my cousin who lives out in California, I'm in New York, but he called and he said, I would love this recipe from Aunt Helen. Can you get it for me? And so I emailed my cousin and she texted me the recipe and it was, in her beautiful handwriting. You know how folks had just stunning cursive that we don't anymore. And I was able to share that with my cousin and he made the recipe, sent me something. It was wonderful. And then unfortunately my cousin, she passed away maybe 3 or 4 weeks after I received that recipe from her. And so now I have this and I have other recipes. We're all talking about that. Now we're putting them all together in a book that we can preserve for the rest of the family. So it is a wonderful way to get people together to talk because everybody likes to eat. And the nice thing about this recipe is we remembered when my aunt made it and how she would sort of ad lib what she was throwing in. So my cousin's recipe wasn't exactly as he remembered it because there's always some secret ingredient that my aunt never shared. And that was a nice way to talk about those moments that we all had when we were younger.
Well, I'm so sorry for your loss, and what a great way to have these memories
Yeah,
and to
thank you.
have them safe, have them kept safe.
Yeah, thank you.
So how does someone start with DIYBook?
Well, if people are interested in DIYBook, they can go to DIYBook.us. And we have, as I mentioned, 2 options. They have the life story platform and we have the business book platform. So at the top of the page where it says get started or tell your stories, you can click on either one. And if they want to start a life story, they just register their email and password. And they get an automatic 7-day free trial to see if it's right for them. So the commitment level is, why not try it? If you're interested in writing a book, it's making a step in the right direction. And after they create an account, actually they answer some questions about what kind of life story they're interested in. So we have hundreds of writing prompts in our library that are, again, based on my experience ghostwriting, and they're divided into categories. So some people might want to write about family recipes. You might have the recipes, but then how do you string a narrative out of that? Well, we have questions that help people do that. Maybe you served in the military or somebody served in your military and you want to talk about their career. We have questions to help you tease that out. People who've experienced trauma, that can be very difficult to write about in a vacuum. And so we've developed ways to help people go through that process of putting that on paper in a way that's authentic, but also respects what that person is trying to accomplish. So we have all of those types of prompts. Folks get those prompts emailed to them weekly. Then they can answer them in the author account, which feels, when you open it up, it's like a writing platform, like a Google Doc is what it looks like. And they can add pictures and they can change the titles if they want. And after a while, they'll have a book. And we take all of the worry out of printing and formatting. So what folks need to do when they decide they're ready to go and print their book is, how many copies do they want? Do they want color or black and white? And what picture they want on their cover?
That really takes all the guesswork out of developing a book, and there's a ton of guesswork when that's involved.
Yes, if you've done self-publishing or any kind of independent publishing, when you go to print the book, you can't just take a Word document and upload it. It'll get rejected. And there's bleeds, margins. So if you have your text that's going over the margins, the text is going to disappear. If it's going too far into the bleed lines, you're going to lose it there when the book is glued together. So I think that's part of what we offer our authors is another element with that they really don't have to worry about. They just get to worry about the fun stuff, like what color do I want my book to look like, or what picture do I want on the cover.
It's really like they have their own personal ghostwriter that's working with them on their book through this, which is nice because, yeah, as you said before, and I know this firsthand, ghostwriters are expensive.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that it's generally a fair price when you consider what a ghostwriter is doing, but it's not within the, it is for most people it is expensive and it's heartbreaking for me. I mean, and that's how DIY book came around. But basically with the ghostwriter, you're asking them to engage in what I like to call a 9-month marriage. You get to know the nitty gritty details of somebody's life. Sometimes you may be working with somebody whose views differ with your own, and that's part of the gig. The ghost is there to share the client's story. Developing the voice of somebody else, that is a very challenging thing. That is not something that comes easily to most people, like right out of college. It's something you develop when you write under your own byline and writing and reading widely. So it is a skill that takes time to develop. And it's a process. You're listening to the client. And, sometimes I know when I'm working with ghostwriting clients and we send them a chapter, I'll say, I'm looking for the most edits from you in this chapter. And it's not necessarily that I think it's, we've written something bad, but I'm looking for the client to tell me that it sounds like them. I might have thought that a particular word is something that they use frequently, and I might have been off on that. So that's really the opportunity for the client to share that. And that takes time. So unfortunately, that part is hard to replicate when you're doing DIY book. But I think we've gotten pretty close.
Well, I really like how you have this set up because people can come in at every level to write their book. Because, I mean, we haven't talked about in ink ghostwriting, but I'd love to. And I mean, and you're right. I mean, ghostwriting for the books that someone has that wants to take it to maybe a different level. I mean, you have to have a very good ghostwriter.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that that is true, because you're asking somebody who doesn't know you to get to know you and then take your vision and make sure it sounds like you, but also make sure that other readers are going to, one, be able to read it, and then two, also enjoy it.
So at in ink ghostwriting, what kind of services are provided there?
So in ink ghostwriting, I guess if you think of all of these writing offerings that I have as kind of I guess a triangle. This is at the very top. So it is I guess you could say a full service ghostwriting firm. I have a team of ghostwriters and graphic designers and folks who want to write a book, whatever kind of book. I mean, you name it. I feel like over the last decade or so, we've written it. And so we get folks who come to us with an idea and they haven't written anything yet. Folks who want to get an agent because they want to get a traditional publishing deal and they need help. So we help them with a book proposal. Some folks come to us with a manuscript. We edit that. So we really help people at any stage of the writing process. There's no one way to write a book, right? I like to think that we're diverse enough that we can help people where they're at. And that's been pretty rewarding.
Well, I'm so impressed with what you do completely there, and especially the book proposal. I mean, how often people get involved in that and then realize, oh my gosh, this is more than I thought I can do.
Because it's different kind of writing. And that can be a shock to a lot of authors. That they think, oh, I'm just going to send this manuscript off to Random House at the editor there, and that's just not how it works. You need a book proposal, you need an agent, and you're basically writing a business document, which is explaining to the agent, what your book is about, who you are, and how everybody's going to be able to make a little money on this deal. So it's a less artistic way of looking at the book industry. But it's an important one. And it's a very helpful process I've found for authors too, because if they're still in the early drafting stages or they're still in the idea stage, it helps them get very focused on the kind of book that they're trying to write, the audience they're trying to reach, and those sorts of things.
So, what type of books do you do ghostwriting for in ink?
Oh, like I said, you name it, we've done it. We've had, obviously life stories. We've had business books. We've done fiction. We've done more books that are more scientific in nature. We've really had to do some research or assist on some research. We have had some science fiction books. We've had art books. Truly, with children's books too. it really has just kind of run the gamut in terms of what kinds of services people are looking for. We had one project where a client had written a book of poetry, and they weren't looking for us to write the poetry. That would have that's never happened where somebody wanted us to ghostwrite poetry. But they just wanted somebody to listen and offer constructive feedback, which was a really neat project. It was different. It required a different set of skills that I don't use that often, and it was really quite rewarding.
And do you still offer services where people can have books translated from French into English?
If people are looking for that, I can certainly help them with that.
What type of work have you done with that?
So this Mademoiselle de Malepeire was my own translation, and then I've done translation. So I'm the translator for that one, and I've done translations for nonfiction works that have appeared in nonfiction volumes. So customer has or the author has a piece of text that's in French, and it's supporting the greater works. We've translated that there, and that's always pretty fun too. Because you really kind of got to get to it. You got to make sure you're preserving again, there's a balance, right? You're trying to preserve the original author's voice, but it's in another language. So, and sometimes with French and English, like the cadence is different, just the words are different. So that can take a little bit of finessing sometimes, but it's just a really rewarding avenue. And I wish I did more of it. But really, it's been mostly focused. My life's been focused mostly on ghostwriting this last 10 years or so.
Well, and I understand you were involved in a project that was funded by the National Endowment for the Humanities.
Yeah, that was a fun translation. That was hard. So that was we were translating correspondence from people who were involved in the circle of Elizabeth and Robert Browning, who were poets. And so these letters were written in French. Robert and Elizabeth Browning were English poets in the early 19th century. And so they wrote lots and lots of letters, and people wrote lots and lots of letters to them or about them. So any of these letters that were in French needed translation, but they weren't typed. So they were written in 19th century French cursive. So that was the first part, was deciphering the handwriting, which was fun and frustrating at the same time. It takes a little bit of time to sort of, at least for me, get my eyes set on what I'm looking at, because it's different from contemporary French cursive. There's now in France, it's very standardized, and everyone kind of learns how to write the same way, and everyone's handwriting was very similar. But in the 19th century, that wasn't necessarily the case. And people took up the entire page because paper was expensive. So you've got people writing front ways and back ways and sideways along the margins. So you have to kind of figure out what goes first and what goes second. But that was a lot of fun.
That sounds like that's a journey in itself.
It is. It was, yes.
Oh my goodness. So for our listeners that want to connect with you at In Ink Ghostwriting, where do they go?
Well, they can go to the website, which is, as you said, ininkghostwriting.com. We're also on Instagram at in.ink.ghostwriting. I think we're on Facebook as well. So it's In Ink Ghostwriting. And, I monitor all of those accounts. So I would love to hear from folks and hear what kind of story they're working on and how we could maybe help them.
And also with DIYBook, do you have a place? Because I think everyone knows that one person in their family that's always wanted to write a book. I mean, is there a way that they can get a gift card or something like that for you?
Absolutely. If you go to DIYBook.us, right at the top, you can purchase gift cards. And they're virtual, so you can either have them sent to your own address, your own email address, or to the recipient. That you can help them on their writing adventure.
How exciting is that? Well, anytime's a good time to get a gift card for writing a book.
I agree.
Well, Barbara, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. This was wonderful. This was so much fun.
Well, thank you, Barbara. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about DIY books and In Ink Ghostwriting. If you think it's time to write the book you've always wanted to write, make sure to visit DIYBooks.us or ininkghostwriting.com. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.